Picea bonsai, also known as spruce bonsai, are a popular choice amongst bonsai enthusiasts due to their unique shape and texture. However, shaping and maintaining these trees can be quite challenging. One of the main reasons is that they have a tendency to spring back after rewiring. Rewiring is a technique used to change and shape a bonsai tree by bending and shaping its branches. However, Picea bonsai are known for their strong and resilient wood, which makes them resistant to shaping. As a result, even after the branches have been wired and shaped, they will often spring back to their original position over time. Another reason why Picea bonsai are hard to shape is that they are slow-growing trees. This means that they take longer to respond to shaping techniques and require more patience and persistence to achieve the desired effect. Overall, shaping and maintaining Picea bonsai requires a lot of patience, persistence and skill. While it may be challenging, the results can be truly stunning and well worth the effort. Join me as I work on some of my Picea bonsai trees. Picea is a genus of coniferous evergreen trees in the family Pinaceae, commonly known as spruces. They're native to the Northern Hemisphere and are widely distributed in the Arctic and boreal regions of North America and Eurasia. They're known for their conical shape, evergreen needles, and wood that is strong, durable, and useful for a variety of purposes. Some species of Picea are popular ornamental trees and are used in landscaping, gardening, and bonsai. Welcome to the bonsai garden, and today I'm going to be looking at a couple of spruce trees which I own. Alberta spruce, Picea conica, and I believe this variety might be a Picea conica glauca. Glauca suggests that there is a sort of bluish tinge to the needles. It's a popular subject for bonsai, and it's a tree that's particularly widely available in garden centres and even supermarkets around about Christmas time, because it has that traditional classic Christmas tree look. It's usually a sort of upright growing conical tree, which is not so great for bonsai, where we want to add a bit of interest to the tree. And you can see here in this example, which I bought about 2020 and which I've been styling for the last several years, it's got some interesting movement in the trunk. Now, I'm not a great fan of Picea, and in fact a number of different people have done videos on styling Picea over the Christmas period, and I was resisting the temptation to also do that because it's a tree that I find very frustrating to work with. And the reason for that is that although you can see here the branches are really quite flexible and you can move them quite significantly, they are a problem when it comes to wiring and shaping. And the reason is that you will put the wire on, which will hold the branch in place, and then when you come to take the wire off, perhaps a year later, all that happens is it springs back to its original position. So as a result, you probably will find that you need to leave the wire on there longer. But as you can see on this particular example, it's got quite deep scarring in the trunk here from where I did leave the wire on. And I removed that just before Christmas, but I've got quite deep fissures in the bark. It's not such a problem on this particular tree because it's one that will look interesting with craggy bark, and that will grow over time and just look rugged. But it's a frustration nevertheless that these trees are very difficult to shape quite significantly. All I'm planning on doing with the trees that I'm going to show you today is a little bit of wiring to position the branches So in this one, for example, the branches are all growing slightly upwards and would benefit from just being wired into a more horizontal or even downward facing position. So I'm quite happy with the shape of the trunk on this one, and I've had to reapply quite heavy wire to that over a period of 2 to 3 years, and every time that I've taken that wire off, I've found that it has tried to revert back to its original shape, but it does now appear to have set into the position that I want it, with an informal upright trunk on there. So let's get to it. I'm going to apply some wire on here. These are the bonsai tools that I'll be using, and when it comes to bonsai tools, these are a few of my favourite things. I do apologise for the tacky references to The Sound of Music. I will be trying to shoehorn in as many of those as possible throughout. Because I anticipate that the wire is going to be staying on there for a while, I am going to use a slightly thicker wire than is warranted by the branches that I'm wiring, and I think in this case it's probably a 2.5mm gauge wire. And I'm just going to start from the bottom of the tree and work my way up, wiring branches in pairs and just bringing them into a lower position all the way up the tree. So I'm just taking an initial length of wire, and I think judging and trying to guess the length of wire is something that will come to you as you get more experience of wiring. And so just getting that anchored onto the branch here and coming around the trunk and onto this other branch here, which is at a slightly odd angle because there was another branch coming out here and this was a side branch on that, but unfortunately we have to work with what we're given, and I'm trying to position this so it looks more like a natural branch that came out at that point. So I'm just going to manipulate that around a little so it follows where that initial branch came out, and I'm just bringing that into a lower position than it was, and the same on this other one. And I'm trying to wrap this so that I'm avoiding and working around the secondary branches that are coming out of there. I'm not applying it too tightly around the branch. I'm just really trying to bring that into a more downward position. What I can do as well whilst I'm working on this is these branches tend to be a little bit on the straight side, so I can add a bit of lateral movement in there at the same time, so the branch is a little bit more interesting in shape as it comes out. And that will also make it easier to develop more of a pad here over time. That's those two branches lowered. What I can also do, not necessarily at this point, but at a later date, is also apply wire to these secondary tertiary branches and also lower those as well. Because what they have a tendency to do is, particularly at the tips, those tips will start growing straight upwards. So let's select another pair of branches, and it looks like we've got this one here and there's one to the back. I'm just gauging the length of wire that I require, and with this wire I just put that over the branch initially, and then I can bring that around the trunk to anchor it, and then up to where the branch is. And now I can work my way along this lower branch, and I'm trying to avoid and work around the junctions that exist already. It's worthwhile having a look at some of the videos by people like Ryan Neal on wiring technique and spending some time practicing to try and perfect that. It's a major bonsai skill, and so it's worth investing some time just looking and seeing how to best master that. So again, that's another branch there which is slightly lower now, and I just need to do the corresponding branch. It helps to always wire branches in pairs because it means that your wire is anchored and makes it stable for wiring. And again, I'm just trying to manipulate my way around some of these smaller branches. What I don't want to do is trap the foliage and kill and cause damage. And on the ends here, just using pliers. I can't think of any more Sound of Music jokes or references, but I can tell you a joke about a pair of nuns. So there are a pair of nuns taking a bath together. The first nun says, "Where's the soap?" The second nun says, "It does rather, doesn't it?" And if you need that explaining to your kids, then don't ask your parents, and certainly don't tell them that I told you the joke. And for those adults who didn't get the joke, I'm not sure what I can do to help you. And I think that's, for the time being, all I'm going to do on this particular tree. So I'm setting up the position of the branches and lowering them to make them look like the image of a more ancient tree. They say in an older tree the branches tend to droop due to the weight of the branches and the foliage on there. And so I'm just trying to replicate that in this tiny tree. One final point about this tree I will make is that it hasn't been repotted since I put it into this green ceramic pot, but the pot is damaged. Some of the glaze has cracked off there due to frost, and so I may well look at repotting that, perhaps in about a month's time when I start repotting my trees. Okay, let's have a look at one of the other trees. This is the second tree, which I actually got at the same time as the previous tree. But you can see here it's got a more dramatic bend in the trunk. And in fact, I initially put some very thick wire around that to give it this S-shaped bend. Took the apex of the tree out here and left that wire on for I think a year. And when I took it off, the tree then sort of straightened up. So what I did, because I've got this point here, I actually applied a restraining guy wire right over the top and around the bottom of the trunk and then back up again. And so what happened was, as the tree grew, it pressed against the guy wire, and the guy wire helped push the trunk down. I was able to crank that quite tightly until I've got this shape. That shape has set, and I'm quite happy with that. If you look at the branches from above, you can see where I applied the wire. So you add shape to those, and they make a sort of snaking path as they move away from the trunk. And that's true with the branches most of the way up the tree. But what I have noticed is that if you look at the trunk and the tree from the side, these branches, which were initially sort of much lower, have sprung back up, and particularly as they get towards the ends, those ends are beginning to grow upright again. So what I'm proposing to do is apply wire, sorry Bambi, and I'm just going to lower those branches. And previously what I had done was I also applied guy wire just to the tips here, just to pull those down. And that may also be an option. Let's get into it and have a look. So initially I'm going to look at lowering this, which is the primary or first main branch, and also wire that across to this one on the other side that sort of balances the composition. And then I'll just work my way up and do the next two and the two above that. And I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do about the apex of the tree. If in doubt, you can always leave it, come back to it at a future point. So I'm just gauging how much wire I need. And it's possible I might still end up putting a guy wire on this just to bring that even further down. Just bear in mind that when I take the wire off, this is likely to spring back up, so by adding a guy wire I'm pulling it down even further So I've decided I'm going to put a guy wire on this just to bring it down lower. I always find that to help prevent marking a tree with your guy wire, it's useful to use some kind of sleeve around the wire to stop that from damaging the bark. And this is a piece of flexible air hose from an aquarium. I'm just going to use that as a sleeve over the top of the wire. Place that on the branch, and that just stops the wire from marking the branch. So I'm just going to cut a piece of wire, make sure that's long enough. So I've fed the wire through there. I'm going to place that over the branch. Do it at that point there. And to just feed the wire around the bottom of the pot. And then pull that taut. And just twist that on the front of my pot just to make sure that's nice and tight and that it's pulling that branch down. Again, I'm expecting that once I take this off, that branch may well spring back up, so I'm exaggerating the downward movement for the time being. I just snip off the excess there. And just twist that round at the end, just finish that up. And just want to put a bit of movement into that branch and downward movement as well. And there we go. It does kind of have a stepped effect up here, which I actually quite liked that when I first designed and wired the tree, so I think I'm quite happy with that. Seen from above, the branches do splay out around the tree, and I'm not actually going to do anything at the moment with this apex. It may benefit from some wiring. It's still quite flexible, so it's something I can deal with at a later date. It may well be that I just trim some of this back to encourage some back pudding, but at the moment I'm not overly concerned about how that looks. So here's the tree. So I rotate it round. And this is far from being a finished bonsai. If you consider that this was initially a tree which had the traditional Christmas tree conical shape, it's moved on quite significantly, I think you'll agree, from that point. It's got some quite interesting movement in it. This is another tree which will benefit significantly from being repotted into another pot. So it's currently in a plastic or mica training pot, and I think it would go nicely into a ceramic pot, perhaps an unglazed Chinese Red River clay pot. Probably very much the same dimensions. I hope you found that useful or interesting. If so, then please check out the other videos on my channel, and you might consider subscribing to be notified of future videos. Thank you for watching, and hope to see you in the next one.